Hi, welcome back to another episode of From Dropout to JD. I'm your host, Adesua, and today we have a really special guest named Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle, and I am 45 years old, and I dropped out of high school when I was 15 years old. I never completed the 9th grade, but in the fall, I will be attending the University of Mississippi School of Law. And there's a lot that happened in between those two things.
That's awesome. So, well, first of all, congratulations on getting into your dream school. That is, God, I hope that happens for me. That's really heartwarming to hear, I guess.
It is. It's kind of amazing. I know that there's so many good law schools out there, and Mississippi was the right fit for me. It might not be for everybody, but I live in a very rural area, and the University of Mississippi has something called a rural legal center. So that was what initially attracted me to that school. And I visited closer schools because I live in Virginia, and I'm married, and my husband will be staying in Virginia because somebody has to fund all this fun that I'm having. And the people at Mississippi were amazing. From the adcoms to the students to the professors that I talked to, they set up opportunities for me to speak one-on-one with professors and ask them questions and get a sense of just how the people are, but also what law school would be like for me. Because when you're 45, it seems a little weird, but it was very comfortable for me. And one of the things that I really considered when I was looking at different law schools was the cost of living in the area. And it was very reasonable in Mississippi. So I'm super happy to go to the University of Mississippi and hotty toddy. So.
Right. I remember when we initially talked over the phone, I was kind of shocked, or it was new information, I guess, to consider not just the tuition, but like what goes on outside of that. So yeah, I'm definitely factoring that in as I approach law school.
It really makes a difference. I really liked William and Mary. And it's obviously closer. It's also in Virginia. But the cost of living in that part of Virginia was pretty high. So we couldn't do what we could do in Mississippi. And it would have cost a whole lot more for me to live by myself and bring my dog and do all the things that I wanted to do. So that I don't think enough students take that into consideration. You look at that price tag that they give you and you go, okay, this is what it'll cost. But if groceries are 30% more in the area that you're looking at, that's a big hit, you know, if you want to eat more than ramen noodles anyway.
Oh God, the ramen noodle diet. I remember her.
Yeah. I mean, they're good, don't get me wrong, but not every night.
Yeah,
So,
no, not every night.
But
sorry, in case y'all are wondering, there's a bit of a lag. So if there's any awkward pauses, it's because I'm still listening as Michelle's talking. So we're working with that tonight. But let's, I'm interested to hear more about your backstory. Like, where did you grow up and what led you to dropping out of school?
So I grew up in Burlington County, New Jersey. I was pregnant and had my first son at 15. And at that point in time, they don't let you go back to high school after that. I had to go to a special school. So I went from being in a advanced algebra class to learning how to add fractions. So that was very frustrating for me. So instead, I just went and took my GED, and then took my SATs and enrolled in community college. one of the things that people tell you when you have a baby at 15 is that you will never go to college, that you've ruined your life is over, and some other wonderful advice that people give you. And they were all wrong, but that's okay. I am probably still very stubborn, although I will swear that I was more stubborn when I was, 15, 16, and 17. But when I started school, I also had to work. I also had to support this child. He wanted to eat too, and more than ramen noodles. So I ended up working more and doing school less. So I think I completed like maybe 12 credits. And then I ended up just working. And, you don't have a great job market. And I worked on a lot of horse farms. I taught riding lessons. I rode anything that had 3 legs, even though it tried to kill me. So that was what I spent a lot of time doing until my now husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, said, why don't you go work for the railroad? It's outside, you'll like it. It's way less hours, which, and you'll be home more, which was a total lie. I was never home more, but I did make a lot more money. I probably made more money working for the railroad than I will as a lawyer.
Really?
And I,
Wow.
so I did that for 10 years. I started as a freight conductor on freight trains. And then I worked on a signal construction gang. So it was like me and 5 other guys, and we worked 8 on, 6 off. So I spent 8 days with 5 other guys besides my husband. And then I came home for 6. But they turned out to be your brothers more than anything. And it was a fun job. I really enjoyed it. And then both my husband and I, we worked for the same company. We worked for CSX Transportation, and we both became managers. And they don't let managers who are married work in the same area, which is inconvenient. So I spent about 8 months living in my horse trailer, which had living quarters. So it was like a camper in the front, and then I used the horse area as my giant closet.
Okay.
So if you can imagine a toy hauler type of thing, except for your toys are horses. So I parked at a campground, and I lived in that for about 8 months. And we decided that was untenable for a marriage. We saw each other maybe 2 days a month. And there was really no end in sight. It was like, do we want to do this for the rest of our lives? And we said no. So I quit the railroad and started my own business as a freelance writer. And I have been doing that since.
Wow, that's a very interesting story. When I think of your train profession, I'm thinking of truck drivers and how long they have to be on the road. Is it similar to that or different?
So as a conductor, it's very similar. We actually even have some of the same rules because we're all under the Department of Transportation, and then the railroad is also under the Federal Railroad Administration. So you get called 2 or 3 hours before they want you to get on a train, and that is 24/7, 365 days a year. You do not get holidays. You do not get birthdays. It's really hard to mark off. If you like having a family, I don't recommend being a conductor. So you get on a train, and I went from Clifton Forge, Virginia to Richmond, Virginia, mostly. There was a few other routes that I ran, but that was mostly what I did. And on a good day, you get there in 8 hours. So you didn't earn overtime until 13 and a half hours. So,
Wow.
so it was the hours are long, and sometimes you get lucky and you catch a train at 9 o'clock in the morning and you get to Richmond and you get to enjoy the city a little bit before you go to bed, and they call you the next morning. But most of the time they call you at like 2 in the morning for 4 in the morning or something like that. So moving to the signal department was great. I got to use my brain a lot more. Basically what you do on a signal construction gang, my kids called it like building Legos. They give you a box of material. They give you the plans. They give you a crane truck and a backhoe and tell you good luck. I saw my boss once every 3 months. About. So basically it was up to our gang to build whatever, whether it was a railroad crossing that everybody goes across, or the signals that the trains run on. So but we had a lot of fun. They give you the keys to all the big toys and say, here, have at it. So I
love the autonomy.
I enjoyed it a lot too. And, as long as you didn't break anything, you didn't hear from your boss much. We were under, random drug tests. So if we hadn't broke anything and he showed up, you were like, oh, somebody's getting drug tested tomorrow. But it was a lot of fun, and the autonomy is great, and you have to figure it out. There's nobody coming behind you to fix it for you or to do something for you. You have the plans, you figure it out. There are people you can call to ask questions, but at the end of the day, it's you digging the ditch and putting the cable in and standing these signals and making sure that they work, and making sure that the gates come down when the train comes, so nobody gets hurt. So
do you see any of the skills you used when you were working with trains now that you're a practicing attorney?
I'm not practicing yet, but I think that figure it out part, that realization that you literally have people's lives in your hands. If those gates don't come down when that train comes, somebody could get killed. And it's a big responsibility. And I think being able to handle that stress will be important as a lawyer, because you have either somebody's livelihood or somebody's life, basically somebody's freedom in your hands. So I think having dealt with that stress and understanding what it means to truly have that responsibility will be really important. And then in my freelance writing life, one of the big things that I think would be really helpful in school and in practice is deadlines. If I don't turn in an assignment now, I don't get paid. But, that's my livelihood. So I'm used to juggling multiple assignments and being able to switch from one to another, because sometimes I'll have an assignment where I'm writing about, chickens, and then I have an assignment where I'm writing about Indian motorcycles. So that you have to be able to make those switches pretty quickly, and you got to write fast. So
wow.
So I think that's something that's really 2 skills that are very helpful.
Right. So when you were talking about like conducting trains, my first thought was, wow, like I'm sure you have such a wide skill set that would be great as an attorney, not to jump ahead past the fact that you haven't even started law school.
Right.
But I've worked a lot, and I feel like a lot, like there's things that, like, I guess, for example, like my customer service jobs really kind of bulldozed over my stubborn, like, parts of me. Like, you can't be hot-headed or, like,
right.
It's the customer is always right. And that was a really hard lesson I had to learn that was, in my opinion, very necessary for me. And it's like a big part of why I want to be a lawyer, because I want to serve others and be of service to the community. So I guess to rephrase my question, like, is there anything that you've learned from these past jobs that kind of inspire you to become a lawyer? Like, where did being a lawyer come into play?
Okay, well, a lot of that came from some writing that I did pro bono. So I'm the president of the Virginia Professional Communicators, and in that position, people think that I can get them on the news all the time. That is not true. Please, if you want to be on the news, do not email me. But somebody who's local had asked me to help them, and I did get them on the news, but and I got them on Dr. Phil. So
Oh, wow.
it is on Dr. Phil, but this man, his name is Christopher, and he is serving 1,800 years in prison. It's 1800 for murder, burglary, and robbery. He fully admits he shot his stepfather. But he shot him because he was molesting his 4-year-old daughter, his stepsister. So there's a whole backstory behind it. But when I looked at it and I read the case, and I am big on research, and I'm like a pit bull. When I get started on something, I start digging and digging and digging. And one of the things that really bothered me was he took a plea deal. That is a plea deal for 1,800 years. And I really felt like he would have been better off, even though Virginia at the time was famous for killing people quickly on death row, and they were going for the death sentence. He had a very compelling story, and the state psychiatrist came very, very close to meeting both prongs of the insanity test. So I just really felt like he didn't get good representation. And I've done a few different pro bono things like that. I covered, and what I generally do is I write it up so that the people have a way to communicate to somebody really effectively what their story is. Because when people are so close to a story like that, they miss details, they get off in the weeds, and sometimes just having a very good, concise, well-written piece that you can say, here is my story, gets them through doors, and it will help them if they want media attention, or it will help them explain to somebody what their story is. The other ones that I've done have mostly been missing persons. I just recently did one for, it's funny, she was a lady who drove cabs. If you work for the, conductors don't have cars when they get to where they're going. So there's dedicated cab companies. And so I met her when I was a conductor, and her brother went missing from a nursing home, and they've never found him. Unfortunately, there is way too many people of color who have gone missing from this particular area in North Carolina, and none of them have ever been found. So I just wrote that one up. I'm trying to get some things going with that. Some of his things were located near a pond, and the pond was never searched, which seems rather obvious to me, but whatever. But what happens in these missing persons cases when they get so old, and it doesn't matter what color you are, because the other ones that I've done have been white people, and the cops still treat them the same. They won't talk to them. They refuse to talk to them. The other one I did was a lady who walked out of her front door at 7 o'clock in the morning in her pajamas and has never been seen again. And that happened 30 years ago. And it took a lot to get the police to talk to that family. They did eventually, after getting, they went on the Vanished podcast. We printed some stuff, And we put in a FOIA request, which is a request for information, a public request for information. And they finally talked to them. So it can be really frustrating for people when I see how they are treated by law enforcement, whether it's victims or families or whatever. We don't do a very good job at helping these people. And there's too many missing people in the world anyway. But so that is what I would say started it. And then the other incident that happened that really made me pay attention and start thinking about being a lawyer. My son was in prison for 6 years. He wrecked a car and his girlfriend died. And while I think it was an accident and mostly fueled by hormones, he had a beer. His blood alcohol level was 0.04 and he was under 21. So he was convicted of vehicular manslaughter. He got a very light sentence with 6 years. But the day we picked him up, there was another boy standing on the curb. And I was paying attention to my son, and he wanted to run to the truck. He was afraid that some technical issue was going to come and pull him right back in that jail.
Wow.
And when we had to go directly to the parole office so he could fill out all the paperwork and whatever. And when we were there, I said, oh, I wonder if we'll see that other boy. And my son looked at the floor and didn't answer me. I was like, what? Tell me, what? The other boy was a foster child, aged out while he was in prison. He was serving like a 3-month sentence for pot or something dumb. So they gave him $40 and a bus ticket to a halfway house. And I nearly lost my mind. How is that child going to ever, he has no support system. How is he going to be a functional member of society? You gave him $40. I was angry. I'm still angry that we treat so many people like throwaways. So I'm hoping with a law degree, I can affect that in some way.
Right. That's awesome. I feel similarly. Okay, I tried. Because I was looking today actually during my work break at marijuana litigation, because like you kind of mentioned it, like he got like 3 months for a small amount of pot, which I think is absolutely insane. Like, especially in a country where some states have it legalized, like there's no consistency. Like it's not like we have small countries within a country. Like this is one nation. I feel like there should be more, like more forgiveness. Like it doesn't make sense to me, and I really want to help people who are in prison for smoking weed or being caught with weed to be free. Like it's just, I think it's actually insane.
With the amount of people that we put in prison for drug offenses is crazy. We have the highest prison population by a lot. And it's very obvious that this tactic isn't working. Like when we started, okay, let's put them in prison where they don't have access to drugs, which is also a whole different problem because they do.
Oh, interesting.
But and the original thought was, well, this will help them get clean, especially for people on some of the heavier drugs. My town, I live in a town of 5,000 people, and we currently have a big meth problem right now. If you've seen the show Dope Sick on Hulu, that was actually filmed here appropriately. So I mean, there is a difference though to me between pot and meth or heroin or cocaine or whatever. And even with those heavier drugs, we're not solving anything. People go in and they come back out, and then they go back in and then they come back out. And it's a terrible cycle. So I don't think that our original plan, where people go in, they get clean, and then they don't want to do it anymore, I don't think that's working. And we have to come up with something different. We actually do have drug court here, which is very new. And it does try to get people into treatment situations more than prison situations.
Okay.
So jury's still out on whether it'll work or not, but it's a step in the right direction, in my opinion, though.
Yes, that's definitely.
Yeah. And so it's, I don't know. So what are you going to do with your law degree?
Like I was kind of saying, I'm hoping to do marijuana litigation, like to free people who are incarcerated for drug like possession or usage or anything. And I'm really fascinated with how people get penalized for certain crimes. Like, I think that's a huge interest of mine. I think I'm still honestly wrapped on the fact that they said he had 1,800 years in prison.
1,800
Like, that's kind of silly. Like,
right.
Come on.
I mean, they gave him 600 years for burglary, 600 years for robbery, and 600 years for murder. And I mean, it's ridiculous. And this person was 18 years old. He didn't, he had been molested himself. The father had been reported before. The bus drivers had reported him for molesting these girls. And there are 3 of them who, of course, they feel like this guy is their hero because they were all being molested by him, and Christopher saved them, in their opinion. So they're fighting hard to get him out, but unfortunately, he did file for a pardon last year, and it was denied. And our governor was leaving, so I was kind of hoping that he would get it then. And in the state of Virginia, you have to wait 3 years before you can reapply. So right now their goal is really just to keep his name in front of the governor and keep people aware of his situation. But yeah, it's absolutely insane that, I mean, why do you give somebody 1,800 years? And I mean, it wasn't like, this person didn't like kill a bunch of kids. He didn't, this was not a heinous crime. This was one bullet. I mean, he fired one time. And, there's some other things where, okay, yeah, he could go to prison for a little while, but 1,800 years is a bit much.
It is.
So,
yeah. After this interview, I definitely want to get his information and post it in the description so that the listeners can follow his story and maybe donate to him if possible or something. I don't know, but that's not right.
Yeah, and he does. I'll link to his Facebook page, and his mom and his sisters are in there, and they're running it. So they do generally have some fundraisers to cover legal fees and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a completely crazy situation. And I do believe that there are people that need to go to jail. I don't believe that a lot of the people that go to jail need to be there or need to be there for as long as we put them there. We don't do a very good job of rehabilitating people and giving them skills. I mean, my son is incredibly lucky. He's incredibly smart. So he currently works for a pharmaceutical company, and he does great. But trying to get a job with a felony on your record is hard. It's hard. And he had to like pull some rabbits out of his hat and learn some coding like in a week. But he had the benefit of having a family and having a support system when he came out of prison. And there's so many people that don't have that. And, my parents and my husband and all of our children, and I owned my own business. So his first job was web designing for me. Okay, I own a freelance writing company. I write tons of web copy. We'll start a web design business, and that'll be your deal. And that helped him get the IT role that he has now. Most people don't have that when they come out of prison. He was very fortunate. Most people go back into the bad situation that they came out of. And I think that we could do a lot more in prisons, teaching people skills, usable skills, whether those skills are white collar or blue collar, whether it's teaching them accounting or teaching them how to, build a house. Those are skills that are marketable, and there are people that will take a chance if you already have those skills. But there's not a lot of people who will say, okay, I'm going to teach you these skills. So I think that we could do a lot more in our prisons to give these guys and gals real skills while they're there, instead of just locking them up. Let's teach them something. Let's give them some skills to use when they leave prison.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right on. I like that a lot.
So
what would you say, like, what would you call the kind of law you're interested in? It'd be like criminal defense or something else?
I'm going to call it rural law. Like I said, I live in a town where there's 5,000 people. In the entire county, there's 15,000. The lawyers here generally practice a very general law. They do criminal law, they do civil law, they do a lot of different things. In an ideal world where I had all the money and all the time, I would start a clinic for foster kids, a legal clinic for foster kids, because so many foster children end up in the system. There's a statistic out there that if a foster child has been placed more than 5 times, there's a 95% chance that child will end up in the criminal justice system. So I have a little bit of support here and there, and hopefully that's something that I can do. But in an ideal world, that's where I would be. In the real world, we'll see whether that happens or not. But there's just a lack of legal knowledge of people's rights, and even with basic simple stuff, writing a contract for business deals. I mean, in rural areas, we do a lot of handshakes, and a lot of them handshakes go bad. And then nobody has a leg to stand on when they want to go to court. They don't have anything in writing. They don't have any understanding. And in my opinion, a contract makes better friends. If I'm going to do a business deal with a friend, I'm 100% going to have a contract so that we all understand exactly what everybody's responsibility is. I think it makes better friends. So we had, I've just seen, this one is a little weird. We own 3 acres. There's a creek that separates 2, and then there's another acre across the creek, and that other acre goes up to a road. Across that road, they had sold an acre of land, 1 acre. Somebody bought that acre of land and put a double wide on it and sold it as 3 acres of land. When the people bought the house, they started trying to knock down trees on my property. My husband did not take well to that. He went flying up there and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm I'm making a path to the creek so my kids can play, not on your, this isn't your land, dude. So he was unaware of that. He had never had a survey done. He had, I don't know who did his title search, but, I don't know the whole story. I just know that part of it because it involved us. I don't know whether it's a rent to own type of situation or whatever it is, or a private sale where they did it without lawyers. Because I can't imagine a lawyer would have let that slide. Even a crooked one. So you have that type of thing where people, they don't understand their, the basic law. I was in Tractor Supply and there was a new girl there, and I'm in Tractor Supply all the time because I have a bunch of chickens and I used to have goats and all that fun stuff. And so we were talking and I said, I've never seen you in here before. And she was from Florida. She had come up here and done a rent to own deal for a bar in the next town over. And then when all the prices went up of land, the guy decided that he was just going to sell it, which was, I guess it was legal in their contract. I don't know. I've never seen her contract, but they had put $60,000 of work rehabbing that bar and they had no way to recoup it. Now, probably had they had a lawyer look at that contract beforehand, that lawyer would have said, don't sign this, or would have put safeguards in for that client so that they would be protected in a case like that. Bless you.
Thank you.
So there's so many different things. I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I'm hoping it's somewhere with foster kids, supporting them and, giving them the opportunity. I went to Liberty University and I actually did most of my work online. The woman they have at Liberty, and I don't know whether this is at every school, but they have a person dedicated to helping you craft your law school application.
Nice.
If you have one of those at your school, use them. But this woman has graciously already volunteered. She said, if you ever get that off the ground, please call me. I will help them write their resume. I will, help them. I will do mock interviews with them. I will do anything I can to support you in this. So, not just helping them legally, but giving them an avenue to get a little bit more support afterwards.
It's an awesome resource. And I know the college I go to, which is University of North Texas, we have a pre-law advisor, and she does a great job of collecting resources for every aspect of the admission process, which actually I wanted to ask you about. So you recently applied to law school. Like, I would say out of everyone I've talked to, you're the one who's like the closest to actually doing the thing. What was your experience like? Like, how, especially at your age, like how are you able to juggle everything?
So for studying for the LSAT, that took a lot of time management. Like I said, if I don't turn work in, I don't get paid. And I prefer getting paid. My clients prefer getting work. So I would block off time. I also had to learn how I learn better. I had to be very economical with the learning that I did. So I figured out that I learn better when people explain it to me. So YouTube videos were probably one of my best resources. I did not pay for any of the, I think I did pay for PowerScore, which was like $100. I just paid for like the lowest level PowerScore where I got all the tests but I didn't pay for any of the training. I did have, one of my clients generously paid for 10 lessons with a tutor. So that was great. Wow. And that really helped me get over the hump for the logic games. I probably could have asked my son, because after I took the LSAT, he took it, and he didn't take the LSAT, but I showed him the logic games and he could do them off the top of his head, and I wanted to smack him.
Oh, wow.
I was like, where were you? He was a little slow, but learning those tricks, specifically for the logic games where, you're looking for what they're looking for. I think most tests are learnable, but if you have to know how you learn. So if you learn by hearing, then, turn the video off and just listen to what these people are saying. If you learn by reading, get those LSAT books and read them and practice them and make your notes and color in on the book, or however. I'm a very visual learner. Those YouTube videos were super helpful to me. Time-wise, I did a lot after 9 o'clock in the evenings and a lot before 7 a.m. I normally get up at about 5:30. So I just got up a little bit earlier and worked then. And then a lot of times I would be working at 9 at night. So that scheduling and blocking off time. One thing I did try to do was I tried to block a few 20-minute windows. I learned great in 20-minute segments. If it gets too long, I kind of fly away a little bit. So I would try and block off a couple of times during the day where I could just hop on YouTube or, go on and take a quick lesson, because I used the free one that they have from LSAC, and that was mostly what I used. So blocking off, those little 20-minute periods so that my brain didn't fly away and I could just keep at it every day. That was super helpful. I gave myself 3 whole months to study for the LSAT the first time I took it, which was a horrible idea. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I did get a 161 the first time I took it.
Okay.
So it wasn't terrible. I felt like, wow, okay, that wasn't horrible. And you only had 3 that first time I took it. So the second time I took it was this past October. And I did up my score by a few points. I scored a 164.
Okay.
And that was the test that it shut off in the middle of everybody. So my test shut off in the middle and they couldn't do anything about it. So I actually had to take it 3 times. So I was 2/3 of the way done when I had 1.5 sections left out of 4 when it shut off. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Because I felt like I was doing good. There was a reading comp section that was a little heavy, but I didn't feel like it was terrible. So I was pretty upset. And then when it came around again, I had taken it a week later. But it all worked out and it was fine. So, so that's my LSAT study tips is, block off your time. And probably the other thing that you need to do is you need to tell people in your life you love them, but you're not going to talk to them.
Okay.
I mean, you have to be upfront that this, I need to do this. I'm not going to, the way I explained it to people was this test is worth tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship money. And that wasn't a lie. I got tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship money. Because I got a decent score on the LSAT. So when I explained to them the difference between, doing okay and doing good was this much money in scholarship, they went, okay, I'll talk to you later. You text me, you let me know when you have a minute to talk or whatever like that. So my friends were really supportive. My husband was very supportive. I would just go lock myself in the room and study for a while, and he wasn't real upset with me. So he was very happy at the tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I really think that so Liberty also has pre-law. A really fun thing I got to do even though I'm an online student, I got to participate in moot court and
wow.
go and practice and do the, it's an undergrad program, but that was really helpful. I thought it helped me understand the logic that they were looking for on the LSAT. Plus, I got to practice arguing and practice writing, practice legal writing. It was a little far. Liberty's about 2 hours from me, so I had to go 3 times a week for one. But for one semester, I was like, I can do it for one semester. So that was because I'd already taken the LSAT. Everybody was used to me not talking to them, so I was like, I can talk to you now because I got 2 hours in the car. I can just chat with you all you want.
Oh, okay.
So
Nice.
So that was a really cool thing. But yeah, if you have someone who will help you with your resume and help you with your, your personal statement, I really think that makes like a world of difference, even just in the formatting. Make the formatting the most boring thing you can think of, and law schools will love it.
Yeah, I've heard that. Like they don't. Something I've understood from my like studying of the process is they say don't be special, just stick to what's good. Like if with your resume, don't put color on it, keep it black and white, like font 12, that whole spiel or whatever. So yeah, I've heard that to be true.
Yeah. I would say the biggest frustration I had is I'm older and may have a heavy foot, so I had to figure out where all the tickets I've ever gotten in my life so that I could report on the admissions. And I ended up, I moved out of New Jersey almost 20 years ago. Turns out that they don't keep records that long, and I had to hire a private investigator to find that out.
No.
I went to the state police station. I went to the DMV. Like I drove up there and went to these places, and they couldn't help me. So I ended up hiring a private investigator to investigate me. And I also, I did hire another company to run a complete background check on myself so that I knew all the things that I forgot. So that was probably the most challenging part. Other than, condensing my resume, which is longer, I know a lot of the KJDs, they always say, well, I don't have enough to put on it. Well, I had too much to put on it. So,
oh my God, the KJDs.
I've written 2 books, I've done all this weird work. I serve on the board of the farmers market. I'm the president of the VPC and all this other stuff. And, most of my work is either freelance writing or railroading, which, that's really relatable to law. But I mean, I guess if you do employment law, it's very relatable. So that was challenging, but the person that I got to work with, she was great. The other tip that she gave me that I thought was really helpful was to make the AdCom's job as simple as possible. So in your head, make the AdCom's job as simple as possible. In your header, put your LSAC number, your name, and whatever the name of, if it's your personal statement or if it's your resume or whatever it is, put it in your header. And then when you label the files, keep the same format. Put your name, put your LSAC number, and put whatever it is. That helps AdComs, find everything, and you don't quite get lost as much. It's also great attention to detail. It shows you have attention to detail. So I thought that those were really good tips, and they really helped. I mean, anything you can do to make that person's job easier just makes them like you more, and you want them to like you.
That's really good advice, actually. I've been taking notes. I don't know if you're listening to this or watching this. If you're watching this, I'm sorry. I have like a huge forehead. I keep like looking down to take notes. But when you said learn how to learn better, that really struck me because I bought those like test books, but I just realized as you're talking that I hate reading. Like I don't want to read any of this. Like I'm a hands-on person. I want to like be in it. So I think just taking practice tests again and again might be what
Right. And
I
you
might
might be
what I should do.
yeah, you might be the person that really benefits from doing these, doing the exercises that they give you in the free software that LSAC puts out. They have a bunch of little things that you do where you run through just one type for a while, and and you and that might be your thing. So yeah, learn how to learn better. That's
Yeah.
there's an old, he used to be the coach of the United States equestrian team. He's since been set down, but his name is George Morris, and he always said, perfect practice makes perfect. It's not practice that makes perfect, it's perfect practice. So the better you can learn, the better you can figure out what works for you. And be that, if you're the person that learns better in marathon sessions and digging in it and pushing it around and figuring out what that is, then block off those times in your schedule so that you have 2 or 3 hours to really get into it. And if you're the person like me whose brain leaves after 20 minutes, don't force yourself to do 2 hours, because you're wasting an hour and 40 minutes. Do 20 minutes, go do something else, come back and do 20 more minutes.
Right. This is really good advice. I'm really excited for this episode. I feel like there's so many good little tidbits in it. It's
I
pretty
hope so.
awesome.
I mean, I hope that this story inspires people that, no matter where you are in your journey or where you are in your life, that it's not over.
Right.
It's not too late. You can go back, you can learn. I don't think I've ever met anyone who can't learn. You just have to figure out what type of learning you need to do and what changes you have to make in your life, what it needs to look like for you. And that's going to be different for every single person. And, for a while, my kids were number one, and that's, I worked and they got all the money and attention. And now that they're old and out of the house, mom gets to go play college student. So
That's awesome.
I actually have children in college now, so that's fun. We can compare notes.
That's cool. And so that actually leads into a question I've been wondering. If you could go back and change anything, would you? And if so, what would it be? Like academically?
Academically, I probably wouldn't have taken the classes in, I wouldn't have taken the community college classes. All they did was drag my LSAC GPA down. Because
Okay.
at that point in my life, I had so much going on, and believe it or not, it's stressful to have a baby when you're a teenager. It's stressful to have a baby anytime. And then add working, and I wasn't concentrating on school enough. So I think I would tell myself at that point in time, you can do this later. You don't have to be a stubborn, hard-headed fool and force this right now. Do what you need to do for your family and to make sure everybody's eating more than ramen noodles, and you can come back to it later.
Yeah, that's great advice. I would suggest, like, to piggyback off that, yeah, focus on one thing. I feel like it's really hard to multitask with school, and honestly, you don't want to risk it. Like a bad grade, like you think C's get degrees, that's true, but if you want to be a lawyer, that makes things
not true.
Hard.
And I'll tell you, my GPA at Liberty, which is most of all of my credits, is 3.96. I have 1 B. And I'm really, really salty about that B.
Wow. That's amazing.
But it's you do have to be able to concentrate on it. And I'm happy that I'm doing it now because I've worked and I've balanced things and I've figured out how to block off time, how to say, no, I can't do that. No is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain why. You can just say no. It's okay. So that's one of those things that people, especially women, we feel like if we say no, we have to give this giant explanation as to why we're saying no.
Absolutely.
And that is 100% not true. You can just say no. That's it. No. So
I catch myself doing that a lot when I write emails at work. Like, I feel like I need to end my sentences with like an exclamation point to seem less harsh or to over explain when it really just could be done in a couple of words. So yeah, that's a good reminder.
Yeah. And it helps you when you're trying to balance all these things. And I don't think life gets easier. There's always going to be things to balance. There's always going to be things that you need to do. But if you can figure out how, time blocking works great for me. It might not work for everybody, but if I say I'm going to do this for this amount of time, then that's what I do for that amount of time. And then, if you want to come in on my time block, no, just no. Sorry. I'm not even sorry. Sorry, not sorry. This is mine. But I've never really had too many issues. When I explain is when I have issues. Then people want to solve all the reasons that I just gave them why I can't do something. If I just say, no, I can't, then nobody argues with you.
Right. So interesting. So I guess my last question before we wrap up would be, I like to think about where I was years on the road, like after I dropped out of college, and what I would tell myself or someone in a similar situation. So if there's anyone out there who had to leave high school because of a pregnancy or is juggling a bunch of different things as they go through college, like what would you tell that person? What advice would you give them?
I would tell them, 1, you are valuable. 2, you can do this. And the worth that those people may have assigned to you because you had a baby or because you're in a situation that even you don't like, that situation is not your value. You are still valuable no matter what situation you are in. And take that and use that to get yourself into a better situation. Sit down, think about it, but don't ever devalue yourself because of what somebody else told you.
Amen. That was amazing. That made my heart just like feel all the feels. That was great.
Good. And I really hope it helps somebody. I don't mind sharing my story, and I hope it helps somebody.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing your story.
You're
I'm
welcome.
really excited for this to come out. This is really good. This is great. Okay.
All right.
Well, until next time. Bye,
All
guys.
right.